After a year of delays due to legal issues, the fabled Season 1 finale of Helluva has been released for the overjoyed Helluva fanbase to enjoy, and for the critics who have been tearing apart Season 2 to see if this episode has the highly regarded charm that Season 1 had that won over the internet. I'm going to go over a brief summary of what happened in this episode, so if you want to get straight to the review, skip to the time displayed on the screen. The episode abruptly starts with Luna going to a Hellhound party that she was invited to by Tex. After Luna gets into some bickering with other Hellhounds and meets up with Tex, a Hellhound by the name of B takes the attention of the party with an impressive musical number. B then meets with Tex and formally meets Luna, and Tex reveals that B is his girlfriend. After a very awkward interaction between B and Luna, Luna decides that she wants to leave the party and calls Blitz to pick her up. As Blitz and Luna are about to leave, an imp from the party recognizes Blitz and eggs him on to join the party. Blitz has no interest in doing so, but Luna sees this as an opportunity to be associated with someone popular and convinces him to go. In no time at all, Blitz gets absolutely drunk and becomes the life of the party, even out drinking B. Luna is proud of Blitz and starts to enjoy the party, but Tex and B pull her aside. They tell Luna that Blitz is starting trouble and asks her to go check on him. Luna gets defensive of Blitz and almost starts a fight with B, but backs down and looks for Blitz. She finds Blitz, who has only gotten drunker, and drives him home. As he's falling asleep on the couch, he mumbles that Fizzaroli was right and that he's going to die alone, and asks Luna if she will be there for him. She says she will and tells him to go to sleep, and the episode ends with Blitz throwing up. The Helluva fanbase has been complaining about the lack of Millie's importance to the overall show for a while now. But after Vizzy Pop made a tweet addressing Millie's portrayal in the show, and fans probably just got burned out from talking about Millie, the attention has started shifting to Luna as another character that is underdeveloped. Well, this is a Luna episode, and she gets the most satisfying character development we've had in the show. We learn a little more about her with minor character traits like being uncomfortable at parties because she doesn't handle alcohol well, and even though she wants to make friends, her aggressive behavior flares up very easily, even towards people who are genuinely nice to her. But the big moment for her is we see Luna finally be proud of Blitz, and not only accepts him as her father, but promises to be there for him no matter what. Blitz this episode was kind of underwhelming. Since the episode takes place after Ozzy's, I was pretty interested in seeing the after effects of that event on his personality. But for most of the episode, he is drunk and doesn't really say or do anything truly noteworthy. One could make the argument that him being drunk is supposed to be new and entertaining, but if we are going to be honest with ourselves, he is not that different drunk than he is sober. We do get to see him lament that he is going to die alone, but based on what we know about him so far, this concern of his isn't exactly surprising. We get introduced to B, who I guess is the Helluverse's version of Beelzebub. His character is very strange, and I couldn't quite put my finger on her overall role in the show or really this episode. Is she going to be a new antagonist or a friend of Luna? I like the idea of her being a reoccurring rival to Luna, but like I said, with the action she commits throughout the episode, she seems like a very neutral character who doesn't really affect the episode in any big way outside of her musical number. Also, this wouldn't be a critique about B if I didn't mention her design. I don't have a problem with her being a Hellhound instead of a B, even though I would have much rather have seen her portrayed that way. My main problem with this character is her actual design surrounding her Hellhound B hybrid form. The Helluverse has gotten a lot of flack ever since Hazbin Hotel aired for its over-design of characters, and I think B is the very embodiment of that critique. The lava lamp hair and tail, the wings, multiple arms, the patterns on her face and ears, the multicolored hair in front of her lava lamp hair. To put it nicely, it's an over-detailed eyesore that I can only compare to what the byproduct of what an attention-seeking furry mating with a toddler's diarrhea after eating a box of crayons would look like. As for her personality, I don't really find her dislikable, but more on the annoying side. But just like her overall purpose in the show, I'm kind of neutral on her at the moment. The characters in this episode feel mostly dull with the exception of Luna. Luna, I think, is at her best in this episode due to her still being the same aggressive, edgy character we've always known her for, but we also get to see a more insecure side to her, and this insecurity indirectly led to her accepting Blitz as a father and openly cares about him directly, finally completing the arc that they started back in Spring Broken. Blitz, on the other hand, was a disappointment, with the audience learning nothing new about him in what would be a time in his life when he's the most vulnerable. Blitz and Luna are struggling with their past and vulnerabilities in this episode, but only one grows from it while the other doesn't change at all. As for B, she's acceptable, but not really interesting. That's not to say though that she doesn't have a lot of potential for future episodes. The humor in this episode is uncharacteristically subtle. It still has plenty of raunchy jokes and foul humor, but in comparison to many other episodes, this one might have some of the tamest humor and overall lack of humor we have seen in the show. There are some standout moments, with the most memorable being that one beeline, and Luna's confrontation with the other hellhounds at the beginning of the episode kept the ongoing joke of making fun of the worst kinds of people humanity has to offer running while not feeling played out. There is one joke though that is probably one of the most memorable jokes the show has done in a long time. The dentist joke made me smirk, not laugh, but this joke did something that I thought the show forgot how to do, and that is telling a semi-clever joke that doesn't revolve around swearing or sex. This joke may not have been a laugh-out-loud moment, but it was actually semi-witty and felt new and refreshing. The stagnancy of cursing and sex being the topics of the humor in this show has been feeling more evident than ever throughout season 2, so this just slightly above average joke felt like one of the best jokes in the entire series because of that. What makes this even more bizarre is that Vivian herself wrote this joke, proving that she can be a decent to above average comedic writer when she wants to be, but it seems like that talent was lost somewhere between seasons 1 and 2. Speaking of season 2, it's very hard to ignore how much worse Seeing Stars is after this episode. I'm going to go into a more in-depth discussion about this in a future video, but the Luna we see in this episode is not the same we see in Shooting Stars. Anyways, the biggest appeal of this episode is the song, not only because it's one of the most visually striking sequences we have seen in the show, but because the song itself is tied with Bonetown for being the best in the series. And this makes total sense since the song was written by Kesha. The only problem I have with this song is that it does its job so well that everything else feels unimpressive in comparison. In fact, between the comedy and actual events in the episode, everything is so much more toned down that it feels like the entire episode relies on this song to hype up the audience. It almost feels less like an episode of a show that has a song in it, and more like one of those extended music videos that have a plot revolving around the song. The other standout moment was of course the ending that tied this episode to Ozzy's, which as I already mentioned was a big moment for Luna and probably one of her best moments in the entire show. But the addition of Blitz actually feeling the after effects of what happened at Ozzy's is what I wanted more throughout this series, and even though the moment was short, I still appreciate that we do get to see a somber moment that readdresses the end of the last episode, instead of pretending it never happened. It does end on one final gag that may have slightly ruined the moment, but I actually don't mind it. Usually a joke following a serious scene is one of my most hated tropes in writing, but I kind of wanted the first season to end off on a lighthearted note. It's not a happy ending at all, but it's not a brutally depressing one like the end of episode 7. Either way, I am fine with either scene being the send-off to season 1 since both are unexpectedly sad, but this one does give a relish of playfulness on top of a heartbreaking tone so as not to make the atmosphere oppressively dark. The only moment that felt missing was an epilogue for Moxie and Millie. Episode 7 was their anniversary, and despite everything that happened in that episode, Moxie and Millie probably left as the happiest people there. Still, with this being a finale to Helluva Boss's first season, it feels kind of out of place for them to be completely absent from the episode since one of them is an integral part of the cast. I don't think there should have been a B-plot with them since it would have ruined the pacing of this episode, but maybe a scene where they're at home cuddling with some I love yous exchanged between them and wondering what Blitz is doing. It didn't have to be anything grand, just a quick cameo appearance from them showing how happy they are in contrast to Blitz's misery would have been nice to see. Vivian emphasized numerous times this would be a celebration instead of something to give it resolution to the previous episode, and that is exactly what this episode is, and up until this point, I think only her most diehard fans actually believed her. I know this may have come as a disappointment to many, but in her defense, it achieved its intended purpose of being a celebration of not only Helluva Boss's first season, but Vivzy Pop as an animator. She has come a long way, and although I may disagree with many of her writing decisions and based on the way she presents herself on Twitter, I don't think I would even like her as a person. But we do gotta appreciate her efforts in pushing indie animation further than most who have come before her, and has inspired a new generation of animators to pursue their dreams. This episode doesn't really feel like an episode of Helluva Boss. It feels like a spin-off music video that didn't really add to the conflict that its predecessor started. That being said, it's not valueless. This is the best Luna-based episode we have gotten and improved her character quite a bit, and we got a bit more insight in how Blitz coped with everything he went through. I don't think this episode necessarily needed to be made because its existence changed nearly nothing. The only thing it really resolved was Luna's character arc from episode 3, which was really appreciated because that's one less loose end the series has to tie up later. As for what it added to season 2, well, this episode might as well not exist. Queen Bee didn't really leave a lasting impact that everyone expected from it, and the episode itself is completely unnecessary. But in a strange twist, this episode that didn't need to be made was more enjoyable than anything released in season 2, and did retain some of that season 1 charm. It certainly is one of the weaker episodes of season 1, but in no way is it really bad. There are only a few good moments in this episode if you don't count the song, and there are next to no bad moments to balance them out, so overall this episode was actually good. And it feels so weird to say that, but in a good way. I wish I could have praised it more, but there's just not much else to praise since there isn't really much to this episode. It's an underwhelming send-off to a season, but an effective celebration of the season, encouraging fans to not mourn the end, but to celebrate what is and to be happy with how far the show has come. It's a shame that knowing what comes after this episode makes it harder to appreciate the show in the way this episode wants you to, but if you ignore that, it's hard not to admire what an achievement season 1 was.
I have like a rainbow in my vagina right now.